He spent his whole life preparing for one moment. The moment Nero would order him to die. Around 65 AD in Rome, Seneca received the message he'd been expecting for years. Emperor Nero wanted him dead. This was it. The end. And Seneca's response? He calmly gathered his friends, said his goodbyes, opened his veins, and spent his final hours discussing philosophy. No panic, no begging, no fear, because Seneca had spent decades practicing for exactly this moment. Not practicing how to avoid death. Practicing how to face it. And when it came, he was ready. Not because he was superhuman, because he understood something most people never learn. That the fear of death ruins your life more than death itself ever could. And that once you face that fear, once you accept the inevitable, you become free. Free to actually live. Because you're not running anymore. Here's what destroys most people's peace of mind. The fear of death. Not death itself. Most of us will never even experience our own death consciously. We'll just stop. But the fear, that's with us constantly. Lurking beneath every decision. Every anxiety. Every desperate attempt to stay safe, stay comfortable, stay alive. And that fear doesn't protect us. It just makes us waste the life we have being afraid of losing it. Seneca watched wealthy people in Rome live like prisoners, terrified of anything that might threaten their health, avoiding all risk, obsessed with safety, and they thought they were being smart, being careful, but Seneca saw they were already dead, not physically, but they weren't really living either. They were just existing in fear. Spending their whole lives running from something they couldn't outrun, and missing everything beautiful because they were too scared to stop running. He wrote about this constantly. He said, "We're dying every day. Every moment that passes is a moment of life you'll never get back. You're not going to die someday. You're dying right now. Death isn't something in the future. It's happening continuously. The only question is whether you're going to spend your death being afraid, or whether you're going to actually live." Most people think about death wrong. They think of it as this terrible event that will happen someday. So they push it out of their mind. Avoid thinking about it. Pretend it's not real. And then they're shocked and unprepared when it actually comes for them or someone they love. But Seneca said that's backwards. You should think about death every day, not to be morbid, to be realistic, to remember that your time is limited, that today might be your last day, and that knowledge changes how you live. He practiced something called memento mori. Remember, you will die. Every morning, he'd remind himself that he wasn't guaranteed another day, that everything he had could be gone by evening, that the people he loved could die, that he could die, and that reminder wasn't depressing, it was liberating. Because when you remember you're going to die, you stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop putting off what's important. You stop living like you have forever. Think about how you'd live if you knew you had 1 year left. You'd probably stop caring about most of the things that stress you out now. Stop worrying about what people think. Stop chasing status. Stop putting off conversations with people you love. Stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You'd focus. You'd prioritize. You'd actually live. But Seneca would say, you do have limited time. You just don't know how much. So why not live that way now? He also taught that the fear of death is worse than death itself. Death is just nothing. You won't experience it. You won't suffer through it. You just stop. But the fear of death, that's real suffering. That's present suffering. That's wasting your actual life being afraid of the end of your life. And that's insane when you think about it. You're ruining the time you have because you're afraid of not having more time. There's this story about Seneca near the end of his life. Someone asked him if he was afraid. Nero could kill him any day. Didn't that terrify him? And Seneca said, "I've been dying all my life. Every day I've lived has been a day less to live. Death has been coming since the moment I was born. Why would I suddenly be surprised or afraid now? I've been preparing for this my whole life, not by running from it, by accepting it." That acceptance is what freed him, not from death. Nobody escapes death, but from the fear of death. And that fear is what actually imprisons people, makes them small, makes them careful, makes them waste their lives trying to avoid the inevitable. But once you accept that you're going to die, once you really accept it, you're free. Free to take risks. Free to be honest. Free to prioritize what actually matters. Because what do you have to lose? You are going to die anyway. Seneca said the person who fears death has never truly lived, because fear of death is fear of life. Every meaningful thing involves risk. Every deep relationship involves potential loss. Every bold action involves danger. If you're trying to avoid all that to stay safe, to preserve your life, you're not living. You're just slowly dying while trying not to notice. But here's what he wasn't saying. He wasn't saying, be reckless. He wasn't saying, throw your life away. He was saying, don't throw your life away by being afraid to live it. Don't waste your limited time being overly careful. Don't sacrifice meaning for safety. Don't avoid living because you're afraid of dying. That's the real tragedy. Not that you die. That you never really lived because you were too afraid. Now, let's make this practical. Because the fear of death is probably controlling you more than you realize. Every anxiety about the future is rooted in fear of death or loss. Every desperate attempt to control circumstances is rooted in fear of death. Every obsession with health, safety, security, those all come back to death fear. Not that being healthy is bad. But when it becomes an obsession that limits your life, you've let death fear win. Here's the practice Seneca used. Every morning, meditate on death. Spend 5 minutes considering that this could be your last day. Really imagine it. What would you do differently if you knew? Who would you talk to? What would you say? What would you stop caring about? What would suddenly matter more? Don't just think about it vaguely. Really sit with it. This could be it. And probably isn't. But could be. That practice doesn't make you depressed. It makes you focused. Makes you grateful. Makes you prioritize correctly. Because when you remember you're going to die, all the petty stuff stops mattering. The grudges, the status games, the tiny offenses, the things you're putting off, they all shift in importance. What really matters becomes clear, and you can live accordingly. Also, practice negative visualization about people you love. Imagine them gone. Not to be dark, but to appreciate them now. To not waste time on stupid arguments. To say what needs to be said. To love them while they're here. Because they won't be forever, neither will you. So stop acting like you have infinite time to repair relationships or express love. You don't. None of us do. Seneca also taught that every night you should review your day as if it were your last. Did you live well? Did you waste it? Did you spend it on things that mattered? Or on fear and avoidance? This review keeps you honest. Keeps you from sleepwalking through life. Because each day could actually be the last one. And even if it's not, treating it that way makes you live better. When Nero's order finally came, Seneca was ready. Not because he wanted to die, but because he'd been preparing his entire life. He'd practiced accepting death. Practiced living fully despite death. practiced prioritizing what mattered because time was limited. So, when the moment came, he faced it calmly, with dignity, with peace, because he'd already done the work. The mental work, the philosophical work, the work of accepting the inevitable. Most people die in panic, in denial, in shock that this is really happening to them, because they never prepared, never accepted, never really thought about it. They spent their whole lives running from this moment, and when it catches them anyway, they're completely unprepared. But you don't have to be that way. You can start preparing now. Not by becoming morbid, by becoming realistic about death, about time, about what actually matters while you're still here. The fear of death makes you small, makes you careful, makes you waste the limited time you have. But accepting death makes you free, makes you bold, makes you live fully while you can. That's the paradox Seneca mastered. The more he accepted death, the more alive he became, because he wasn't wasting energy running from the inevitable. He was using that energy to actually live. You're going to die. So am I, so is everyone you know. That's not depressing. That's just true. And pretending it's not true doesn't protect you. It just makes you waste your life in fear and denial. But accepting it, really accepting it, that changes everything. Suddenly you can live, really live. Because you're not running anymore. You're not afraid anymore. You're just here, now, making the most of whatever time you have. Seneca prepared for death his entire life. And when it came, he was ready. The question is, are you? Not ready to die, ready to live, fully, boldly, meaningfully, despite knowing it ends. Because it ends, that's why it matters. That's why now matters. That's why you can't waste another day being afraid. Subscribe for more truth you need to hear.